Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the site webinar for today. I'm Pali Singh. I'm the chair of the IEEE Site Education Subcommittee, and it's my pleasure today to introduce Leslie Donis, who's going to talk to us about project management. So Leslie has worked with Citibank for over 12 years as a project manager and PMO head for Central America and the Caribbean, and management head for Citibanamex. So we're really excited to have Leslie Donis giving this presentation that I think will be very useful for the IEEE volunteers. So we'll have Leslie present, and then we'll have some time at the end for Q&A. So Leslie, let me hand it over to you now then for the presentation.
So, good morning, everyone. I'm Leslie, and I'm pretty glad to be here talking about the introduction of project management and how we can apply it, all this knowledge to our daily jobs. As Pali said, I work for Citibank, and I have more than 2 years, 12 years of experience as a project manager. Then I started working as a program manager, project manager, and PMO head. So I'm part of board of director of PMI in El Salvador chapter as a VP of professional development, and also I am a member for PMI chapter for El Salvador and Guatemala. Of course, I am PMP, and I have an Scrum Master certification. Well, for start, I would like to all of us can have the same concept for projects. So we will start with what is a project, right? So when we say that a project is a temporary and one-time exercise which varies in the duration, the thing or the important thing here is that you have to understand what is and what is not on a project. And for start, you have to know that a project can't be an operative or repetitive task. You will have So you will have to start and then you have to end the project. You can have repetitive tasks for this. The professional management on project requires a disciplined approach to defining, to planning, to strategizing and communicating and control all the project. Of course, Pali and Julie told me that we have to talk about social projects. But at the end of the story, you know that all the concept of project will be or can be applied for the rest of the project. So we will talk about all the general concepts related to project. But what is the importance of project management? And project management is the discipline of managing all the different resources and aspects of the project in such a way that the resources will deliver all the output required to complete the project within the defined scope, time, and cost. And remember that these three constraints are the more important constraints related in projects. These are agreed upon in the project initiation stage. And by the time the project begins, all the stakeholders and team members will have a clear understanding and acceptance of the process methodology and unexpected outcomes. A good project manager uses a formal process that can be audited and use a blueprint for the project. And this is achieved by employing a project management methodology. That's what we are trying to explain this morning. We know that an effective and efficient project management should consider strategic competencies within organization, and it enables organization to, first of all, tie project result to business goals, compete more efficiently and effectively in their market, sustains the organization, and especially respond to the impact of business environment changes on project by appropriately adjusting project management plans. This is our goals in project management. So we would like to start knowing the difference between what is a project, what is a program, and what is a portfolio management. And to start, we know that we discuss what is the difference between these three P and Ps: project, program, and portfolio. But project is an individual or collaborative effort that is carefully planned and designed to achieve. But the important thing here is only for a particular aim. But sometimes multiple projects may be needed to accomplish a set of goals and objectives for an organization. In those situations, projects may be grouped together into a program. That's why we say that a program is a group of related projects. And the idea here is obtain benefits that are not available for managing them individually. Remember that the difference is that you have to have projects related between them. Programs are not large projects. This is a different concept. Also, some organizations may employ the use of project portfolio to effectively manage multiple programs and projects that are underway at any given time. Portfolio, we will say that a portfolio group would be a group of projects or programs managing as a group to achieve strategic objectives. As you see in the chart of the right, we will see all the resources and stakeholders that is related to our projects. Then we have the next level, that is each project that we will handle in our business or in our job. And then we have related projects that will be groups on programs. And the final level is all of these projects and all of these programs grouping on a portfolio. And finally, you will have the strategy of all of organization that we manage. But then, what is a project manager? And we will say that a project manager is the person assigned by the performing organization to lead the team that is responsible for achieve the project objectives, and also is responsible for understand all the stakeholder expectations and needs. The project managers have to work to balance the competing constraints on the project with the resources available. A project manager also performs communication roles between the project sponsor, the team members, and all the stakeholders related to the project. This includes providing direction and presenting the vision of success for the project. PMs use soft skills to balance the conflicting and competing goals of the project stakeholders in order to achieve consensus. And in this context, consensus means that the relevant stakeholders support the project decisions and actions even when there is not 100% agreement. One important thing is that research reveals that the top 2% of the PMs, as designed by their bosses or team members, distinguish themselves by demonstrating superior relationship and communication skills while displaying a positive attitude. As you see, PMs need a combination of attitude, technical skills, and soft skills. Then we have the PMO role and what is the interaction that we have inside of all of these projects and between all of the persons that are related to our project. And the role of the project manager is one of the great responsibilities that we have. The project manager job is to direct, supervise, and control the project from beginning to the end. Some people say that project managers should not carry out project work managing the project is enough. But as you can see, some of the activities as a project manager undertakes are below. So, what is the first one? First, once the project is defined, project manager must reduce it to a set of manageable tasks, obtain appropriate resources, and build a team to perform the work. They must set the final goal on the project and motivate the project team to complete the project on time. And what is the task that they have to do? The project manager must inform all the stakeholders of the progress of the project on a regular basis. Also, they must assess and monitor risks to the project and mitigate them. We know that project managers and projects, not, um, not every project that we handle goes quite as a planned. That's why we say that project manager must learn to adapt to and manage the change. This is one of the important things that they have to learn. And finally, they have the responsibility for make things happen. This is the first things that you have to learn when you are a PM. And well, in the chart of the left, we are showing the interaction between a PM and the rest of people that are involved in a project. As you see, everything starts with a project manager. Then we have all the project teams, the three Ps. As you remember, we talked about project, programs, and portfolio manager. And finally, the resource manager. Next level are talking related to sponsor, all the governance that you have to manage and handle through all the projects, and what will be the steering committee that you select for this project. And of course, who will be the PMO for this portfolio management. And finally, the stakeholders, the suppliers, the customers, and the end user for who we are working for the rest of our project. And now we will see the project manager's skill set. And well, you know that a PM play a far broader role. In addition to the traditional skills, they need to have business skills, customer relations skills, and political skills. Why? Because we think that psychologically they must be result oriented, self started, with a high tolerance for ambiguity. Shortcomings in any of these areas can lead the project failure. They need to have a balance between leadership, people management, effective communication, influencing, negotiation, conflict management, planning, contract management, estimating, problem solving, creative thinking, and time management. All of these things, all of these skill sets, is the reason that's why PMI, or Project Management Institute, makes a big effort to show us how we can learn these three different aspects. And they are named Talent Triangle. And that includes all the technological project management aspect, all the leadership and soft skills that we have to learn, and finally, all the strategic and business management aspect that we have to learn too. Now, we will start watching what about project management process group. As you know, we have to handle 5 project management process group and 10 knowledge areas, but we will start with project management process group. And regarding with this, we will say that a process group is a logical grouping of project management process to achieve all the specific project objectives. And this is our 5: initiating, planning, executing, monitoring, and closing. Initiation is related to identify what is the project objectives, what is well or who will be the PM in our project, what kind of constraints we have to handle, and the important thing here is when or what will be the authorization that we need to start our project. Then we have planning. Those processes require to establish the scope of the project, refine all the objectives that we have, and define the course of action required to attain the objectives that the project was undertaken to achieve. That's why we have that the statement of work, the project plan, the project glossary is important to manage the same concept between all the team, and the assumption and constraints that we have in the project. And finally, what will be the project plan updated? The third one is executing. It's complete the work defined in the project manager management plan to satisfy the project requirements. In that way, we will have what could be the deliverables, what could be the criteria acceptance for these deliverables, and what is the actual effort and completion area data that we have to handle. Of course, we have to learn how to manage or change requests. And finally, what could be the risks and issues that we have through all of our project. Next process is monitoring and controlling. All this process required to track, review, and regulate the progress and performance of the project. That's why we have performance status report. We will say what is the real update that we have until now and what would be expected status. Then we have the plan to change request. How will we respond to the problem that we have, the change management result, and the issue management result. That's why we need to identify any areas in which change the plan are required and initiative to responding change. And finally, we will have closing, the process performed to formally complete or close the project. In this process, we will have the famous sign-off for our business part. Of course, we will have to handle product and vendor evaluations. In that way, we will know if they work good or not inside of our project and what kind of problem we have with them. Also, we have documentation assets or the sign-off that we already mentioned, the legal contract budget closures, the project achieves, and we have to release all the resources that work in our project. Then we have the 10 knowledge areas: integration, scope, schedule, cost, quality, resource, communications, risk, procurement, and stakeholders. All of them are the perfect mix that we have to handle inside of a project. And of course, you have to know that integration is passed through each of these knowledge area inside of all of our projects. So we have to skip to start to scope. And well, what happened with the scope? And scope management includes all the process required to ensure the project includes all the work required, and especially remember, please, that you have to use only the work requirement to complete the project successfully. The primary concept here is defining and controlling what is and what is not part of the project. So, in that way, we will handle 6 processes or 6 steps that you have to follow in order to meet the project management scope. And the first one is plan scope management. And it's not more than creating a scope and know how the project and product scope will be defined, validated, and controlled. Also, you have to collect the requirement. That means that you have to document all the stakeholders' needs, requirements, and all the requirements that you need to meet the project objectives. Next step is define the scope. And defining scope is develop a detailed description of the project and product result that you expect or that your business expects. Create the work breakdown structure is subdividing project deliverables into a smaller and more manageable components. Then you have validate the scope, in which you are formalizing what will be the acceptance criteria to complete and accept finally the project deliverables. Control scope is the last one, in which you will be monitoring all the status of the project. And as a result of this process, we will get the project charter, and also we will get the project scope statement. As you see in this chart on the right, you see the project charter and all the factors that you have to include inside. For example, the project proposed, what is the measure or how you will measure all the objectives, the high-level requirements, the high-level project descriptions, overall project risk, summary milestone schedule, key stakeholder risk, project exit criteria. This is a checklist that you can use for to knowing if you have a good project charter or if you are missing something. Also, the project scope statement. You have to have 4 factors here: the project scope description, the project deliverable, the acceptance criteria, and the project exclusion. This is the result of working of these 6 steps, and finally you will get these 2. Okay? So, what happened with the schedule management? The thing here is for schedule management, you have 6 processes. Plan scope management is how I will manage the project schedule. Define activities is specify what is the action to perform to produce the project deliverables. Sequence activities is what is the relationships among the project activities. Estimate activities duration is estimate the number of work or periods needed to complete individual activities with estimate resources. You have to define if you will use hours, days, months, etc. Develop a schedule is analyzing all the activities sequence, durations, resource requirements, and schedule constraints to create the project schedule model for project execution monitoring and controlling. And finally, you have the control schedule. It's how I will monitor the status of the project to update the project schedule and manage changes to the schedule baseline. Of course, we will say that project schedule management includes all the projects required to manage the timely completion of the project. It provides a detailed plan to represent how and when the project will be delivered the product or services. Defining in the project scope and service as tool for the communication management and stakeholder expectation and as a basis for performance reporting. If you see in the chart of the left, you will see the timeline of the project and the level of the effort. You will see on the top of the chart all the process that we handle in the project, and you see the level of the effort that they will require. For example, if you see in the initiation process group, the effort that you need to invest in the time of the project is less than when you are in planning process. You have to have a good balance between the planning process group, because when you are planning in the project, you are saying what will be the performance of all the time and all the tasks that we have handled in the project. The same occurs with the executive process. But in contrast with closing the project, that you will require a small level of effort in that kind. But there are three different ways to project schedule presentations and report your status. This slide I'm named present the target date. And why? Because you have three levels to present this information. And it's important to know what is your audience, to know what is the information that I have to present, and what is the way that I have to present it. The first level is direction level. And in this case, we will present only the milestone, the target dates that we have as a result of all effort in our project. I mean, this means that you have to present all the general things in your project, just the milestone. The second level is the middle level. And in this case, you can show the bars chart with the durations, the effort, and all the tasks that you have in your project. And the third level is the project manager and execution levels that we name the BAU or business as usual level. Because in here, you can show the detailed information, the project plan, the duration, the effort, the dependencies, the name of the resources, the cost, all the information that you will need to work in your project. This is the three types that or three options that you have to present all the target dates that you have in your project. But sometimes it's very common that our sponsor or our stakeholders or our business needs an improvement in our original target dates. And you have fortunately two options of compression to get it. The first option, well, the first, as you remember, is the original options in which you are one task after other task after other task. That means that you are working in a line of movement. But the first option to compression, you will have the fast tracking. And fast tracking is used in which activities or phases normally done in a sequence and performance and parallel for at least a portion of their duration. The negative aspect here is that you will increase the risk, and also is that it only works when the activities can be overlapped. Here you will have the example in which you are overlapping some activities in order to compress the dates that you originally had. Also, you have the second option, and the second option is crashing. And crashing is not a technique used to shorten the schedule duration by adding resources or adding overtime. But the negative aspect here is that you will need to increase the cost of your project. But at the same time, you will get the result that they need, that is, short your original target date. In that way, when you are present all the plan that you have, you can present these three options. I have my normal plan, but if they need a change or an improve of the date, we can handle a fast tracking or crashing. You have to choose, or you can present both options in order to make the better decision for your project. The next chart is a status. And this helped me because this chart tracks the work that remains to be completed in the interaction backlog. It is used to analyze the variance with respect to an ideal burden based on the work commitment from interaction planning. A diagonal line representing the ideal burden and a daily actual remaining working then plotted. And trend line is then calculated to forecast competition based on remaining work. In that way, you can show all the activities on actual status versus the commitment status. Now we have what is cost management. And cost management, as you know, is very important to know in your projects. All process involved in planning, estimating, budgeting, financing, funding, managing, and controlling costs so the project can be completed within the approval budget. We have four processes or four steps that you have to follow. So the first one is plan cost management. And in here, you will define how the project cost will be estimated, how will be budgeted, and how will be monitored and controlled. Remember that every first step in this kind of process is the how. How I will present, how I will control, how I will estimate in this case, and etc. The second one is estimate the cost. And with estimate the cost, we will understand that we have to develop an approximation of the monetary resources needed to complete the project work. The third one is determine what is the budget. And it is not more than aggregate the estimated cost of individual activities to establish an authorized cost baseline. And finally, we have the cost control, monitoring the status of the project, update the project cost, and manage the change, the cost baseline. And the chart of the right, we have the step that we have to follow, and we have to start from the right to the left. So we start with activity cost estimate. We identified all the activities that we have in the project, and we will identify what is the estimate regarding the cost. Then we have to add the activity contingency reserve. But what is this? Because we have two types of reserves. The first one is the contingency reserve. And the contingency reserve is related to risks that you already identified in your project. In case of you can't mitigate the impact of these risks, you can use the contingency reserve. Then we have to group all these activities in work packages and include what is the cost estimate. Again, you have to include contingency reserves in case of you have some risk by the time you are grouping these activities in your project. When you group all these packages, you will have control accounts. And finally, you have cost baselines. But by the time that you have the cost baseline, you have to add the management reserve. And the management reserve is used to unknown risk in your project. This is the difference between contingency reserve and management reserve. And finally, when you group all of this information, you finally will have the project budget. And this is the total amount that you have to present to your business. Remember that the most important thing here is not only the activities that you have, is include all the risks that you can handle in your project and all the risks that you can't imagine that we have to handle on your project. In that way, it's important to know what is the percentage that you have to include related to contingency reserve and management reserve. Then, okay, in this graphic, you can see the project timeline. And first of all, we have to the red line. And the red line is related to cost of the changes. Once you start your project, you can include all the changes that you want. But while you are advancing in your project, the cost of the changes is increasing. In contrast to stakeholders' influence, is the blue line. When you have all the stakeholders when you are starting your project, the influence that they have is big. But when you close your scope and you have the final scope in your project, the influence that these stakeholders will have will be decreasing. Okay? So the important thing here is understand that if you miss some stakeholder in your project, make um, make make have that you have I mean, if you miss some stakeholders when you're starting the project, you can have problems then because you will have to accept some changes in your project, and this means that you have to increase the cost in your projects. This is a risk that you have to avoid since you're starting the project. That's why it's very important to know what is the number of stakeholders that the project requires. Now we have quality management. And for quality management, we will see that all the process, all the process that you require to incorporate the organization quality policies regarding the planning, regarding managing and controlling the project, quality requirements in order to meet the stakeholder expectation. And in this case, we have three processes. The first process is plan quality management, and you have to identify all the quality requirements and all the standards for your projects, and documenting how the project will demonstrate compliance with quality requirements. Then you have manage quality, and it's not more than translating the quality management plan into executable quality activities. And finally, we have control quality, that is monitor and record the result of executing the quality management activities. But of course, we have to handle some cost for quality management in a project. And we have three types. The first one we have is plan quality management, and is identified the quality requirements and standards for the project. I'm sorry, oh my God. The two types of quality management, okay. The first is prevention cost. To prevent cost, you have to costs related to prevention of poor quality in the project. Appraisal cost is cost related to evaluate, measuring, auditing, and testing all the things related to your project. And failure cost is cost related to non-conformance of the project. Of course, the cost benefits analysis is it will help to the PM to determine if the planned quality activities are cost effective. PMs need to find the correct balance between the next three types of quality cost to use the optimal cost of quality. Of course, you know that the cost of non-conformance are higher than the cost of prevention. So the invitation that we have is use all the prevention cost first of cost of non-conformance. But as we already said, we have to make an analysis of cost and benefit and find what could be the best balance for our project. Resource management. Resource management is the process to identify and manage the resource need for the successful completion of the project. This process, of course, helps us to ensure that the right resources will be available at the right time and the right place. We have 6 processes here. And plus resource management is how to estimate acquired management and how we'll manage or use the physical and team resources. Estimate activity resource is the process of estimate team's resource and the type and the quality of material, equipment, and supplies necessary to perform project work. Acquired resource is obtained team member, facilitates equipment, materials, etc. Develop team is improving competences, team member interactions in order to enhance project performance. Manage team is tracking team members' performance, providing feedback, is resolving all the issues and managing team changes to optimize project performance. And finally, we have control resource. And for control, we have to ensure that the physical resources assigned and allocated to the project are available as of planned and performing corrective action as we need. The idea here is use all your resources effectively, efficiently, and economically. Now we have communication management. And this is a process to require ensure timely and appropriate planning, collection, creation, distribution, storage, retrieval, management, control, and of course, monitoring all the ultimate disposition for all project information. We have 3 steps to follow. The first one is plan communication management. That is develop an appropriate approach and plan for project communication activities. Managed communication is ensure timely and appropriate collection, distribution, and disposition for the project information. And monitoring communication is the process to ensure the information needs of the project and stakeholders are met. On the chart at the right, you will see that for communication, you need 2 things, a sender and a receiver. You have to understand to have a good communication, the sender first encode the information and the receiver had to decode the information. The good balance between encode the information and decode the information will result in transmit the messages. That's why when you are talking with somebody, you have to know how to encode the information in terms of what is the emotional things or what is the personality that the receiver have. In that way, you will understand how to encode the information, and on the other side, you will, as a receiver, know how to decode also the information. If you can do these activities, the information or the communication will be fair. What else? 3 methods. We have 3 methods of communication in project management. The first one is interactive communication. That this is in between 2 or more parties performing a multidirectional exchange of information in real time. Push information. It send or distribute directly to the specific recipients who need to receive the information. For example, when you are using a mail, you are sending information to a group of people. You are push the information. But when you pull the information, you use this type of method is used for large audience. The example here is when you use a SharePoint, for example. You upload all the information, and everyone that wants to know about the information have to download the information from the SharePoint. In that way, you are pulling the information. Then, okay, one of the most important things in projects is risk management. And risk management is when you are developing a risk management plan, identification analysis, and response planning that we have to work in mitigation plan, response implementations, and monitoring risk and project. The objective of project risk management are to increase the probability and impact to positive risk and to decrease the probability to impact of negative risk in order to optimize the changes of the project success, of course. We have 7 processes here, and the first step that we have to follow is plan risk management, is how to conduct risk management activities. The second one is identify risk. Is identify what is the individual project risk and documenting all the characteristics that they have. Perform quality risk analysis is prioritizing individual project risk and assigning their probability of occurrence and an impact. Performs quality risk analysis is numerically analyzing and the impact over the cost. This is the important difference with them. Plan risk response is develop, of course, all the options to address overall project risk exposure. And this is the part of mitigation plan. Who will or what could be the solution of the problems that we have in our project? Implementing responses is implementing all the plan that we have, and monitoring the risk is understand how well it worked my solution, and analyze, of course, if we have new risks in my project plan. In the chart again, if you remember, we see the cost. What is the cost of the changes while I am advancing in my project? But at the same time, in this case, we will see the risk. And the risk, when the project starts, we have all the risks that we can imagine, and we have to collect it, because in that way, we can start to mitigate this risk. But if we miss one risk, or if we identify a new risk when the project got started, the cost of this risk or the impact that this risk can have in my project will be impacting the cost of the changes in my project. And as you know, once my project is started, the cost of the changes will be increased. That's why we have the golden rules for the risk. And the first one we have is make the risk management part of your project. You never have to miss one risk in your project. Then identify the risk early in your project, because we know that the cost is higher once the project is started. Then we have to communicate about risk, because in that way we have the commitment of all of the stakeholders in our project, and we can escalate the problems that we have and find a solution. Rule 4 is consider both threats and opportunities, because we have to learn about positive things and negative things, and we have to increase the opportunities, and we have to decrease all the negative things that we have in the project. Rule 5 is clarifying ownership issues. Who will be the responsible to solve these issues, and who is the person that is causing, or what is the thing that is causing these issues? Number 6 is prioritize the risk, analyze the risk, plan and implement the risk responses. Once we know what is the problem, once we know what is the priority that we are handled, and once we know the analyze that we already did, we know the possible impacts, and we know the possible solution. In that way, we have a plan, and we have to implement these responses. Register the project list, that's in terms of lesson learned, and finally, track risk and associated tracks. Then we change with procurement management, and procurement management is just the process necessary to purchase. Project procurement management includes that the management and control process require the development and administrative agreement, such as contracts, purchase orders, or SLAs. In this case, we have only 3 processes, and the first step is project procurement management. And in that way, we have to specify the approach and identify what will be the potential seller, no more than that. The second step is conduct procurement. It's the process to select a seller and awarding a contract. Then we have to control procurement, the process of managing procurement relationship and monitoring contract performance, making changes and corrections as appropriate and close out contracts. And finally, we have the stakeholder management. Regarding to stakeholder management, we will say that this is the process required to identify the people, group of organization that could impact or be impacted positively or negatively by the project, and to analyze the stakeholder expectations and their impact on the project, and to develop appropriate management strategies for effectively engaging stakeholders in a project decision and execution. We have 4 steps of 4 process here. The first process is identify stakeholders, and the process of identifying the stakeholders is documenting information regarding their interests. What could be the information that will be important for them, and what could be the analyze that we have to make for them. Plan stakeholder engagement is developed approach to involve the stakeholder based on their needs, expectations, interests, and potential impact of the project. This is important because in the way that each stakeholder be impacted positively or negative by the project will be the good or bad reception that they have or the image that they have related to our project. Then we have managing stakeholder engagement, in which we have to communicating and working with the stakeholders. And finally, we have the monitor stakeholder engagement. Is how good is my relationship with my stakeholder, and what is the adjustment that I have to do in order to improve it. Remember that the most important here is that you have to know how is your client and what is the way to work for your client in order to improve or facilitate the work for both. And in the chart of the right, you can see an example on how you can analyze each stakeholder. You can have the list of stakeholders, and then you have all the characteristics that you see in your stakeholder. In that way, you can select what will be the plan for work for each stakeholder. You can use the same plan for all the stakeholders that you have in your project. You can select what is the best way to work with them. Okay? So, to finish this presentation is just to say that you have to understand what is the 5 group of process that we have in project management and what is the 10 knowledge areas that we have in project management. And in the way that you learn how interact between groups, process, and knowledge areas, I think that it can help you to have more success by the time that you have to manage a project.
So this was excellent presentation and Q&A session. This webinar is, again, very important for our IEEE volunteers who are putting together proposals, because many of the elements that you've addressed here are required in the project proposals again. So thank you again for your webinar today. And thank you for all those people who attended, and Juliana for organizing and hosting the session here.